They're much more to people than whether they're alpha or beta people. I think that that's an aspect of their personality, and not the only thing that they have going for them.
Thank you. First, I just want to say that I've read almost every single one of you up there, at least one series by you, if not multiple, and I find you all to be amazing. And by the way, if I haven't read you, my mother has, and the books are sitting next to my next to my bed. Especially, I really want to thank Ms. Frost for creating Bones and Cat, and Ms. Huff for Henry Fitzroy. I am a history major, and Henry Fitzroy just does it for me so much. And Ms. Briggs, I love your werewolves that are alpha. As a former Marine, I think an alpha female needs an alpha male. Yeah. But I actually want to write myself. I have found my whole life I've had characters that come to me, like I read in the back of the author notes that these are my characters. I didn't necessarily mean they were going to go this way, whatever. I have lots of characters, and I know everything about them. I can't figure out how they meet, how to write the rest of the story. Can you guys make suggestions or explain how you get your stories from your characters, or do you have your stories and you find your characters along the way?
You start a story with a person in a place with a problem. And I mean, that's simplistic, but actually it works very well if you're having trouble. If you're not having trouble, do whatever works for you. But if you're having trouble, pick one of your characters and stick them someplace and give them a problem. And so the character, that should be your protagonist character. And the place they are, that's the setting. And the problem they have, that's the beginning of your plot. And the plot is the action throughout the book. And if you start there, and your first task is to make that problem they have the most important thing, that it's life and death to them anyway. And they try to solve it. And everything else will fall in place.
Also, depending on what genre you're writing, but if you have an antagonist, that antagonist is there to press the buttons of your main character. So that you can't really build a really good antagonist until you've built your protagonist. So think about that, so that they're there to push those buttons. And interestingly, in a romance, the hero is actually the antagonist as well. So they're pushing the buttons as well. So you can think about it in terms of that kind of how they're going to get under each other's skin.
I've heard it said that there are really only two plots. And that is, a stranger comes to town and someone goes on a quest. And if you think about it, they're kind of the same thing. So pick one of those and go.
I think sometimes too, I don't think there's anything wrong with sometimes needing a writing prompt, like an idea or something to get you going. And I was on a writer's blog recently, and they had a great way to do that, and they called it the Once Upon a Time method, where you just say, once upon a time, such and such happened. And from there, you can sometimes get a whole story. And it actually worked for me recently, and it was a lot of fun to do. And I think sometimes it gives you the freedom to be more fantastical with things, maybe because you're saying once upon a time. So.
I would say don't be afraid to fill your paper with crap. Seriously. When I'm writing, I will often throw out the entire first chapter and the entire last chapter, because it's me getting my thoughts organized, and the story doesn't actually start until the third chapter. But I need to do that first and second chapter in order to find out where I'm going, and then be brave enough to throw it away and start when the problem starts. So don't be afraid to just throw stuff on the paper and realize that if you do get this published, you're going to be rewriting it and rewriting it and rewriting it anyway. So just put it down there and use it as a jumping off point, and good luck with it.
I would second the don't be afraid to write a bad first draft. There are some times, and I'm multiple books into this, when I will look at chapter 1 and feel paralyzing fear for like a week, and there will be no words. As my long-suffering editor is saying, yes, I know. Anyway, so yeah, if you haven't had your characters in your head interact yet, do a once upon a time, do a person, place, problem, get them interacting, because that chemistry between your characters can probably take care of most I wouldn't say most, but a lot of your fear of what you're going to write next. Nothing gets me writing faster than putting the two characters who are meant to be together in the same scene. So get them there however you need to get them there. And if you have to go back and rewrite 100 times, that's normal. And if you have to go back and delete 10 chapters, that's normal too. But fill that blank page.
Yeah, I second that. I mean, I write by the seat of my pants. Like, I don't outline or anything like that, but I do have the characters in mind. And so I put these characters, and this is not really answering your question, but it's also sort of what Patty said too. It's what's the problem? You know, what's going on right now that is just, it's like the most horrible thing ever, you know, that happened to this person. And then just make it worse. But, no, I never said it was nice. But, so you just, but really, you know, I start from that first line, you know, from that first line, what is it that I can jump off from in this first line that will carry me through the rest of this chapter and into these characters. And then again, it's chemistry, and it's just building and building and building, which is horrible advice for you, because I know it's hard, because there's nothing like concrete to give you, but it's all these different methods and process that you can just sort of throw yourself into an experiment with and see what comes out, you know, on top.
I guess I was just, in many ways, I've had some of these characters, I'm 27, some of these characters have been in my head since I was 12, and it's like, you say put them in the horrible position, it's like, I don't want to do that to him. He's perfect.
No, you have to. You have to.
The way you write good books is you take somebody you really, really like and you destroy them. And that's true. You will learn to enjoy it.
Thank you so much.
Next person who wants to, were you waiting?
I'm trying to form a line. So, I'm a go-getter.
All right, somebody, all right, you. And then, real quick, Marjorie, you should answer this one first, because you're going to need to leave right after this.
All right. Speaking about writing, organizing thoughts, are there any software tools that you all use? And secondly, with EPUBs being easier than ever to make, do you recommend that first-time authors self-publish, or should they still kind of go and shop their work around?
The first part of your question, I just use Microsoft Word and a pad of paper. I mean, nothing fancy. And as to the second part of your question, that really depends on the individual. You know, for me, you know, what am I talking about? At the time I started, the EPUBs weren't really a thing. So, you know, I just did the old-fashioned way, 3 chapters, you know, synopsis, sending them to, you know, cold send, you know, into editors and agents. Nowadays, I really don't know. I think my sense of pride would probably, like, I'd probably want to try to go the traditional route first, just in case, just to see, because I think it's a good exercise in rejection, and trying to, you know, push yourself to see, you know, just how far you can go. But there's also nothing wrong with, you know, there are great stories being published, you know, via the EPUBs, and so it really depends on your personal situation.
Yeah, I just use Microsoft Word as well and jot down an outline that probably is incomprehensible to anyone but me on a piece of paper. And the only thing I really use a program for is to check how many words. It has a little tools, word count, and it'll tell me how many I've written for the day. Some people do have programs, and I've heard some authors swear by them, so I would say whatever works for you, whatever gets you more productive, that's the program you should use. As far as EPUBs, like Marjorie, there wasn't really that. Thank you. She has another panel, she's not just bored. It depends, I think, on why you would want to do it. I've heard some aspiring authors say they want to do it because it's easier. I know self-published authors. It's not easier. I've self-published a couple things on the side. You do just as much work as you would do anything else. So if you think you're going to self-publish it because it's the faster, easier route, there are a lot of self-pub authors who want to give you a wake-up call. So decide why you want to do it. If you want to be your own entrepreneur and you have all this whole set of business plans, maybe that's for you. But if you think it's easier, it's not. And also, there's a lot of stories. When I finished my first novel, I thought it was perfect. 20 rewrites later, I realized it was crap. Sometimes people get excited and they put stuff out there that really needed a good overhaul and didn't get it. So just, writer beware. It's your story. No one will know it, love it, or know it as much as you. Do whatever's best for your story. Maybe not whatever's best for your mood.
We've got about 10 minutes left.
Okay, I use Microsoft Word. When I plot, I've got a little Excel spreadsheet that I use to keep track of where characters are, that I developed myself as just a self-help tool. You find what works for you. I've got a clipboard and a pad of paper when I plot. As far as ebooks versus traditional publishing, if you are very, very good at marketing and you can spend 4 to 6 hours a day pushing your book, and you have a friend who really, really knows what they're doing and can edit it, and if you have another friend who's really, really good at plotting and can pick the holes apart in your novel, and you feel comfortable doing that, then I would say go forth and do e-publishing. If you're chicken like me, and you have a story and you're not really good at marketing, you're not good at spelling, you're not good at grammar, and you have a very small friend list as far as who you trust to look at your work, I'd say try the traditional route. But there is no right or wrong way. You just find what works for you.
I have nothing to add, actually. They pretty much said it all, so.
I'm a Mac person, so I quite like Scrivener.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people, Kelly Armstrong uses Scrivener too. I do WordPerfect because I hate Word. My husband's a programmer, right? So we don't do Microsoft in our house if we can help it. The problem with the ebook is that I think that the time to make big money as a new writer in the ebook revolution is gone. I think that it hit and it was gone within a couple of months. Because the problem with it is most people's first books, my first book, was not ready for prime time. And people put it out there, and people and the readers went out and they looked at the ebooks and they downloaded 100 ebooks and found one that they could get all the way through. And I just don't think, I think it's wonderful for people who have a large backlist. Christine Catherine Rush and Dean Wesley Smith, who are a married pair who have been editors and writers and written under a million different pseudonyms, make a lot of money on their backlist publishing and e-publishing. There's a myth that goes along with the myth that editors are out to keep writers from publishing and reaching their reading public, and that is that editors don't do anything for you. And believe me, as a reader, editors do an awful lot for you. Slush pile reading is not for the faint of heart. And having an editor go through and pick out the books that could be really good stories, it really helps. And as a writer, having editors go through and say, you know, the giant shape-changing spider, that is not a random example, folks. The giant shape-changing spider just really isn't going to work right here. And so, and that was my second book too. That wasn't a first book. That was too bad. So I think that it's a wonderful exercise, but I'm afraid that you will get yourself locked into bad habits. And if you do get a readership, you may ruin your name. I know Dean does not publish under his own name anymore, Dean Wesley Smith, because he did so many tie-ins that he kind of screwed up his name for as far as marketing is concerned. So be careful of the things that you do, and but run with what seems right to you.
Thank you all for your editor love, because I'm going to reiterate that editors do an awful lot for writers, and I think a lot of aspiring writers don't realize that. Okay, we have time for one more question. I'm sorry, I wish we had time for more, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, she actually asked the question I was going to ask about the self-publishing and the e-publishing. So my question is more, as women writers, as female writers, do you ever start to write a character or start to write a situation wherein you feel like you're almost doing your female character a disservice, but you feel that it works well enough, the plot, that you kind of want to push through and put it in there, even though it makes you a little uncomfortable with how it will play out? Any quick examples?
What do you mean? Like you put her in a bad relationship with a...
In a bad relationship, and she's not able to, she's not personally strong enough to pull herself out of it at that point, or you put her in a situation where she would be, say, assaulted or something like that, and while you don't want to put your female character through that and let your readers think that you're that way towards women, that you're one of those writers who has to have her, assaulted to give her character growth, but at the same time you feel that in your story it would work. I don't know.
I mean, I I guess you have to stay true to whatever is best to your story. Sometimes, you know, I've heard some readers say, if you're talking about female sexual assault, that they just think that some writers use it as a shortcut for character building. And I think in some books that's true, and in some books I've read it's just as critical and important to the plot as anything else. And I guess it depends why you're using certain scenes, why you're doing certain things to your character. I mean, hurt the hero and or heroine is a really common theme, and we touched on it. If your protagonist is not in danger and hurting, you're not doing your job. But it should make sense, and you should do it for the right reasons, and not just, oh, I saw this author do it, it worked, so I'm going to slap this in there, and it makes no sense with the character or the plot.
I put, I'm going to just talk about Rachel for a bit. I've put her in bad situations as far as boyfriends, but that was because she was lacking information. It wasn't because she knew it was a bad situation. It was because she didn't have all the information she needed. I would feel very uncomfortable putting her in a position where something bad happened and she knew it was going to happen, and she just went into it blind and stupid. I couldn't do that. She gets in enough trouble on her own. So I hope I've answered your question. I try to respect my character to a very, very high degree, and that would cross the line for me.
I think just to reiterate what was said before, I think it all depends on what is important for your story. What's important to advance the plot and perhaps to show the development of your character. You know, yeah, you don't want to throw stuff in there just for shock value. You want it to be important to the plot, and if it's something that adds to that, then it's okay.
I have a scene in Blood Briggs that sort of hit the boundaries of my level of comfort, but it felt like it really worked for the character. It does involve a female character, not the heroine. But I don't think I'd ever write something that really, truly left me unsettled in a way, you know, because I don't think that's, I'm not sure what that serves, basically.
It's technically a very interesting question. When I was writing Eon and Iona, the main character Iona in the first book, it's set in a mythical Asian country, and she takes a drug for a specific reason, and it's a choice that has got a lot of reasoning behind it, but it is a bad choice. And technically, as I was writing it, I was juggling, and you probably all done it yourself, where you're letting the reader know this is a bad choice, whereas the character doesn't, or is denying it. And so the reader has that glorious delight of saying, "Don't do it!" And they're still barreling towards that kind of destruction.
Like a horror movie.
Yeah, yeah. And you can see it happening, and the train wreck that's coming ahead, which is part of the plot. You need those kind of train wrecks that are coming towards it. So technically, it's about allowing the reader to know that while this character's not stupid, they have a good reason for doing it, but it is, you know, a reason that's going to result in something that's not good for them.
Okay, I think this came from Iron Kissed. I got a lot of this. The problem with it was when I do a book, I know what the plot is going to be, and I know who the characters are, and I put them in a plastic bag and I shake it up really hard and see what goes. And when I saw where the book was going, and I knew what I had to do to make the story work, I stopped writing. I talked to my editor, I talked to my husband, I polled a lot of my friends because I didn't know what to do, because I knew it would impact a lot of people, and I knew it would impact the rest of my series. When you have something terrible happen to a person, it can't just, if you throw it away, then it's the worst kind of writing there is. So I knew that it was going to be something I was going to be living with for a couple more books. How many of you, if you have not read Iron Kissed, you know, put your ears in your fingers in your ears or whatever you want to do. And what happened is I had a bad guy who felt like he had been sexually slapped down by her. He was talking to her in a pizza parlor, and they had a good thing going, and Mercy was just talking to him, and he thought that she was flirting with him, and he thought, I mean, he was one of those guys that have never had a date in their life, and they're having a good conversation about something that interests him, and they're happy, and Samuel walks over and basically drags her off. And so he felt betrayed. He felt like she had been making fun of him, and I already knew what he had in his box of tricks, and actually I thought getting her out alive with what he had and what he could do with them was pretty good. But it was one of those decisions I made not because I thought it would make the book sell better or anything else. It's because what the story demanded. And in fact, I really worried that it would have the opposite impact on the book. It was probably the most important book I've ever written. I got a lot of email from people who had had that particular bad situation happen to them, who told me that it helped them through it. I have a counselor who told me that she uses it to teach other counselors what goes on in people's heads when they have been physically assaulted. And partially the reason I made the final decision to do it was, in reality, I know an awful lot of people who have been assaulted and who have come out of it and said, that incident is not going to ruin my life. I'm going out and I'm going to go on and be the person I'm supposed to be. Mercy didn't do anything stupid to get herself in that situation. She had no reason to be worried about it. And that just, bad things happen to smart people who make good choices. Bad things happen. And to me, it was, I was saying, if I didn't have this happen, I was saying that if you get raped, then you are no longer capable of being a strong heroine. You are no longer capable of carrying a series. You are no longer capable of anything good. And if you're just smart enough and fast enough and good enough, this stuff won't happen to you. And so that's why, in the end, I decided to finish off Iron Kiss the way I did. And it wasn't a fly-by-night idea. It wasn't something I did very comfortably. It wasn't something that was easy to do, or it was just what the story demanded. And so that's what I did.
And we are actually out of time now. So a big thank you. Thank you to all of the panelists, Jeaniene, Kim, Sabrina, Kristen, Alison, Patty, thank you so much for your time.
I did have one more announcement because there was some confusion on it. Alice and I are signing at the Penguin booth. It's at 11:46 or something, not at the... No,
Penguin booth is 11:45.
Thank you. Okay. So not
and Kristen, you wanted to give away your books, yes?
Yeah, if the alpha male and the ex-Marine want to come up here, I'll give them each a book.